Imagine the world, the one that spins silently through the void. Now picture it not as a sphere, but a perfect cube. What if Earth was a perfect cube? You are floating in the silent blackness of space. Below you, hanging in the cosmic dark, is a shape so jarring it defies all instinct. A cube. A perfect colossal cube, 742 kilometers from one razor-sharp edge to the other. The familiar swirl of white clouds and blue oceans is gone, replaced by a geometry so severe it feels like a cosmic mistake. This is not a planet. This is a celestial die cast by a god with no love for curves. Your mind struggles to reconcile it. The gentle arc of the horizon, the comforting curve that has defined every human perspective since the dawn of consciousness, has been erased, replaced by a line. A hard, unwavering line that stretches to infinity. You descend. The first thing you notice is not a continent, but an angle. A terrifying 90-degree cliff face that plunges into an abyss of pure black. This is one of the 6 faces of cubic Earth. A flat, perfectly level plain of rock and soil that stretches for over 12,000 kilometers in every direction. It is a landscape of impossible scale. From the dead center of this face, the horizon would be over 371 kilometers away in every direction. You would see forever, but you cannot live at the center, because gravity, that relentless, invisible hand, is about to rewrite the rules of everything. Gravity on a sphere pulls everything toward its center, but on a cube, gravity pulls perpendicular to each face, directly toward the cube's core. The result is not uniform. Here, on the vast plane of a face, gravity feels almost normal. It pulls straight down toward the planet's heart. You walk a few steps. The ground is solid. But something is wrong with the sky. It doesn't dumb overhead. It feels like a flat lid pressing down. You look toward the horizon and your brain screams. The land does not dip away. It runs in a dead, straight line until it meets a wall of atmosphere, a hazy, vertical cliff of air that marks the edge of the face. That's where the true chaos begins. You walk toward the edge. With each step, the ground begins to tilt. Not the ground itself. It's still perfectly flat, but the pull of gravity begins to angle subtly, irresistibly toward the geometric center of the cube. You are walking uphill on a flat surface. By the time you are 100 kilometers from the precipice, the incline feels like a steep mountain slope. 500 kilometers out, you are crawling on your hands and knees, fighting a force that wants to drag you sideways. 1,000 kilometers from the edge, the ground is now a vertical cliff face. You are not standing on it anymore. Everything that wasn't bolted down, soil, trees, water, entire cities, has already slid in a catastrophic, millennia-long avalanche toward the bottomless chasms that are the cube's edges. These edges are the planet's wounds. 4 of them are sheer 742-kilometer high cliffs of continental crust, exposed mantle, and solidified magma. But the 2 edges that form the cube's top and bottom, they are points. Singular, terrifying points where 3 faces meet. These are the vertices. And from these points, stretching for thousands of kilometers along each edge, are the troughs. Imagine the Grand Canyon, but so deep it exposes the planet's glowing mantle. This is where all loose material on Earth has collected. All water. Every ocean, every river, every raindrop. It has drained into these bottomless, continent-spanning trenches, pulled by gravity's skewed vectors. The faces are barren, arid deserts. The edges are frigid, lightless abysses of rock and ice. And at the vertices, there gravity is at its most confused and weakest. The air is thin, barely breathable. It is the closest thing this world has to space. But the cube is not just a static sculpture. It is supposed to spin. Our spherical Earth completes one rotation every 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds. That spin gives us day and night. It creates the Coriolis effect that guides our storms. Now, picture a cube spinning on one of its vertices. It doesn't roll. It wobbles, a chaotic, lurching tumble. There is no stable axis. The day would be a horrifying, unpredictable strobe. One face might be blasted by direct sunlight for weeks, baking its surface to temperatures exceeding 80 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, the opposite face languishes in a months-long night so cold that the atmosphere itself freezes into a snow of nitrogen and oxygen! Temperatures plunging to minus 200 degrees Celsius. There are no seasons, only brutal geometric extremes. The atmosphere, that 100-kilometer thick blanket of gas, cannot cling to this shape. On a sphere, it wraps the world evenly. On the cube, it pools. It is thickest at the center of each face, pulled down by the strongest, most direct gravity. But as you approach an edge, the atmosphere thins rapidly. By the time you reach the cliff, the air pressure is like the top of Mount Everest. A mere 30% of sea level pressure. At the vertices, it is virtually a vacuum. The sky would not be blue at the edges. It would be a deep, starry black even at noon. And the winds. Oh, the winds. The temperature differences between the sun-scorched faces and the frozen ones would create hurricane, force gales, permanent storms screaming across the flat plains, scarring them clean of any remaining dust, focused into jet streams along the geometric trows. The sound would be a never-ending planetary roar. Life, as we know it, could not arise here. Not in the way it did. The ingredients might be present, water pooled in the deep edge, trenches, organic molecules in the soil, but the stability is gone. No steady climate. No gentle gradient of environments. No shallow, sunlit seas for photosynthesis to begin. If life clung on at all, it would be in the perpetual twilight of the deep ocean trenches, or buried deep within the crust, far from the violent surface. Intelligent life building civilizations? Impossible. You could not farm the arid, hurricane-blasted faces. You could not build a city that wouldn't slide into the abyss. The very concept of exploration would be a vertical, deadly climb into thinning air. The cube would be a planet of profound, absolute loneliness. A geometric prison. And then, finally, we come to the core of the matter. The heart of the question. Because a cube is not a stable shape for a planet-sized mass of rock and iron. The internal pressures, which on a sphere are evenly distributed, are here concentrated at the 8 vertices and along the 12 edges. The corners would bear unimaginable stress, over 350 gigapascals, enough to forge diamond. The faces, by comparison, would be under less pressure. This imbalance cannot last. Rock is not infinitely strong. Not even the solid iron of the inner core. Over time, a cosmic clock ticking in millions of years, the cube would begin to deform. It would fight against its own geometry, its own gravity. The vertices would slowly, inevitably, collapse inward. The edges would soften, rounding off. The relentless, spherical desire of gravity would assert itself. The perfect, terrifying angles would blur. The vast, dead plains would buckle and curve. The bottomless edge trenches would rise, their oceans spilling out. It would be a transformation of biblical geological scale, mountains rising and falling like waves, the very crust of the world recoiling from its unnatural form. After moons, the tremors would cease. The winds would calm. The new shape would emerge from the chaos, smoothed by its own immense weight. A sphere. A familiar, beautiful blue and white marble spinning smoothly in the sunlight. All traces of the cube, the cliffs, the vertices, the geometric nightmare, erased by gravity's patient, inescapable will. The universe prefers spheres. It is the shape of equilibrium, of minimal energy. A cube is a defiance of that order. And defiance on a planetary scale is always temporary. So, what if Earth was a perfect cube? You would have no world to stand on, no stable ground, no breathable air from pole to pole, no rhythm of day and night, no cradle for life to begin. You would have a silent, geometric tomb tumbling chaotically through the void, a stark, angular monument to a universe that never intended it to exist. And then, in the deep time of geology, you would watch it die. You would watch the corners crumble, the edges melt, the vast plains sink and warp. You would witness gravity, the great sculptor, patiently and irrevocably carve its masterpiece from the flawed block. You would watch the cube become, once again, our Earth. A sphere? Home. You asked what would happen if Earth was a perfect cube. Now you know